With the recent unveiling of Project Highland, the new and updated Tesla Model 3, there has been a resurgence of discussion around the stalkless design that was first introduced to the refreshed Model S and Model X. There are quite a few polarized opinions on the matter, and along with those thoughts come quite a few questions, mostly from folks who have yet to experience anything like it, and they really just want to know how it's going to fit into their driving style. Having driven a stockless vehicle now for the better part of 5 months, I just wanted to make this video highlighting exactly how it works, so those who don't have any experience with it might be able to visualize it better. So first of all, the design itself is what I really appreciate, which is it's very clean, very minimalistic looking, fits with the rest of the vehicle. There's nothing sticking out on either side. I came from a Autopilot 1, Hardware 1 Model S, and there were just stock sticking out everywhere. So this really does fit the aesthetic of the vehicle. I personally really like it. I like the look, and it really didn't take me very long to get used to at all. So the turn signals now are located on the left-hand side of the wheel on the capacitive buttons. There is a little nub here that can signify if you're on the top or the bottom making the signal change. It's just a slight press and it comes up like this. You can press it again to turn it off, although as I'll demonstrate in a little bit, the vision that it uses to determine when to turn it off is excellent. As far as if you turn the turn signal on, it just uses the vision to determine whether you made the maneuver or not, and then shuts off the turn signal, which I think is very cool. As for the gear selector appears on the left-hand side of the screen here whenever you have the intention to drive, which is putting your foot on the brake and the vehicle is getting ready to be changed into gear. There is an option to select a smart selection, which will automatically pick the direction it thinks you want to go, and I've found that this works very well also. But in an emergency, or if the screen is out, faintly you might be able to make out right here the emergency selectors where you can press on that to get it to select. Project Highland, it looks like that selector is somewhere in here where there is a little bit of a change to the internal camera housing hardware, and it looks like it's set up in there. But let's get started just so that you can take a good look on how it actually works. So, first thing that happens when you sit in the vehicle and you fasten your seatbelt is you'll get a notification on the screen, and it'll say tap here to, or tap the brake to reverse. So the vehicle knows that I'm in a parking space, and it also knows that there is a curb here in front of me. So once I press the brake, it will have a very prominent arrow showing the direction that it intends to go, and I can then press the accelerator to reverse. If it were to make a poor decision and choose improperly, the selector here that appears, I have the ability to switch it out. But as you can see, it did pick correctly. It's just going to automatically back up. Now, if I want to switch into forward, I can just swipe up and then it will switch itself into drive. And then I'm going to just back in here. So swiping down again brings up reverse. So it's just a swipe motion. Those who are current Model 3 owners and legacy Model S and X, you're still used to the gear selection being right here. I did see a lot of discussion on that, and if I had to compare this swiping of the screen, I would say that it is much more like a vehicle who the gear selector is here. So whenever you go to put it into drive or reverse or neutral, it's right here. Instead of just reaching down and making the selection there, really you're just swiping on the screen here. To put it into park, there are two options. There is a press and hold here, or you can unfasten the seatbelt, in which case it'll automatically put you into park. And then you just get out, which is very similar to how the legacy Model S and X, really Model 3Y, all of the Tesla vehicles, whenever you put it, even get out of the driver's seat, it automatically puts it into park. So I'll do it again and fasten my seatbelt. And you can see now that it automatically says to tap the brake to activate drive. So tap the brake. There's now an arrow moving to the front, and I press on that arrow and away we go. So as far as the gear selections go, I really don't have any complaints at all. The predictive gear selection works incredibly well. I'm actually super surprised on how well. In fact, if I had to say how many times it was incorrect in around 5 months, I would have to say maybe twice that it didn't pick the correct gear and I had to select it on my own. And honestly, I can't even remember the situation that it was in that it did that. So for the most part, that predictive selection works fantastic, although having the selection here as well, in my opinion, if you're coming from a Model 3 or a Y where it's here, I can see that there's just a little bit of difference because you're used to having your hand still on the wheel here. But I shouldn't say any, but a lot of other vehicles that have it somewhere down here where you have to select it, it's really no different just taking your hand off and doing it that way. As far as the turn signals are concerned, I'm going to activate the turn signal now. And I'm just going to, let's say I pulled out of the parking space and activated the turn signal. It automatically turns off, as you can see. It does surprisingly well with when to turn off. So I'm going to try something else here. I haven't really tried this before, so this will be the first time. Put the turn signal on here, and I'm not going to turn the wheel the entire way. I'm just going to make a slight turn here and then go back, and as you can see, it turns off. So it doesn't require a whole lot of turning of the wheel in order to recognize that you made the maneuver that you wanted to make. When I drive, I always usually keep my hand somewhere around here, so it's very natural. I know that one of the biggest concerns is something like a roundabout where your hand is located somewhere else whenever you're making the turn, and the turn signal might not be placed in the optimal position for you to activate it. A good example is now where I've got my hand on the top of the wheel here, and if I needed to engage the turn signal at that moment, it wouldn't necessarily have been in the best spot. I don't have a ton of experience with roundabouts, and for the most part, usually everything I do is full self-drive whenever possible. So if I had to say how that felt, I would just say that this section of the wheel here, you really do get used to where it's at. And if I'm in the middle of a turn and I have my other hand not doing anything, generally if the turn signals are on the other side, I'll just bring my right hand up and activate it this way. And just like anything else, even though it's upside down, it's muscle memory, and I'm just so used to clicking it that I don't really notice anymore. Another good example of this in practice while driving is pressing the right turn signal here. I'm really just kind of bearing to the right, and you'll see it turns off. Same thing with lane changes. If I turn the turn signal on here and complete the lane change, the signal turns off on its own without me having to apply too many revolutions of the wheel to get that click, for lack of a better way to explain it, to turn it off. I know that my Autopilot 1 Tesla and pretty much every other vehicle I've ever driven in required me to turn off the turn signal, specifically during a lane change, manually. I do believe that some of the newer vehicles, even the 3s and Ys, will turn it off on their own. Maybe you need autopilot on. I'm not entirely certain about that one, but I do know that my older Tesla vehicle and pretty much every other vehicle I've ever driven in does require me to manually engage and then manually disengage when it comes to turn signals on switching lanes, because there really isn't enough turn to the wheel to get it to register that a turn was made. All in all, not everyone is going to love this feature, or I guess I should say the removal of the stalks, but if you're super concerned, hopefully this video helped alleviate some of those concerns or answer some of those questions. I don't have really any experience with the Stockless design that really ruined the vehicle for me. In fact, I think it was a dramatic improvement in just about every way. If I had to make one complaint about the system as its implementation is currently on the S's and X's, it's the horn, which is located here instead of pressing here. So right now this does nothing, and this is how the horn is activated. It looks to me, after watching some videos on Project Highland, that they have remedied that by replacing this button with a camera button, and the Highland model now does have the press the center to honk the horn. So my only concern, or my only somewhat of an issue with the way that this is designed, has been solved with that vehicle. So if you're looking at a Highland, then my complaint here doesn't apply because they've already remedied that. Hopefully that answers any questions you may have about how the Stockless design works. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I would be happy to try some things out to try to help alleviate any concerns you may have if you're on the fence about ordering one of these vehicles. Other than that, thanks for stopping by the channel, and as always, thanks for watching.
Then I stop myself for a while.